We catch fish for the whole nation. She got no go feel no quotation. The battle brought in the inflation, bring on all this confusion. But the government take our award. Yesterday, long our boats and my sword. 3 die and go to the god. Don't be now, why I would on the award. NMFA, no stability. One lack storage facility. Yes, incompatibility. I tell me about the 1 way on the bucket. Then they call me Fisherman, Fisherman, Fisherman. Hold on, international Fisherman, Fisherman, Fisherman. Then they call me Fisherman, Fisherman, Fisherman. Hold on, international Fisherman, Fisherman, Fisherman.
Plastic pollution in oceans and other bodies of water continues to grow sharply and could more than double by 2030, according to an assessment released in October 2021 by the UN Environment Programme. Plastic waste, which forms part of the global pollution crisis, is the largest, most harmful and most persistent fraction of marine litter, accounting for at least 85% of total marine waste. Due to poor waste management and human attitude towards proper disposal of waste in Ghana, you find plastics everywhere. The beaches are not spared as you see plastic littered at the shores of the sea. The country is currently experiencing a plastic waste menace. The war to deal with plastic pollution has become a challenge, and this is accounting for negative impacts on tourism, fisheries and aquaculture. Research has shown that plastics are disastrous to marine and human lives. Kate Opoku is the country leader for Let's Do It Ghana, and she explains why.
Globally, we generate more than 380 million tons of plastic waste per year. And in Ghana, around 1.1 million tons of plastic waste is generated per year. Waste, as we all know, is anything used, unwanted, and disposed of. So, for example, if you have refuse in the dustbin, that's waste. As soon as you have this refuse out of the bin and in the environment, in the drains, and it's causing harm, that's pollution. Although there are several factors contributing to the decline fish stock trend, plastic pollution is one paramount factor. When the plastics gets into the sea, it takes some time after some time, it breaks down into microplastics, into smaller forms. So when these marine animals sees it, they assume that it's food. So accidentally, they eat them because they think it's food. And when they eat this, they feed on these plastics. The plastics may choke them, or it may get stuck in their guts, and that will injure. That will also cause injury. They get injured, and sometimes it causes their death. So we are losing most of this marine animals as a result of entanglement and injection. Another thing is that as they feed on this microplastics, they feel full, so they don't go looking out for food. Therefore, they starve. And they starve for a long period, and that also leads to their death. Another thing is that the smaller animals, such as shrimps in the sea, that feeds on this microplastic. Okay, when they feed on the microplastic, the bigger fishes or bigger marine animal also feeds on them. So at the end of the day, they end up having this microplastic in them because the microplastics ends up in their food. And unfortunately for us, we harvest this fish, use it for our meals, and we eat them. So we also end up having this microplastics in us as a result of feeding on these fishes.
She is calling for strict enforcement of laws to control plastic pollution in water bodies.
We have to ensure the institutions enforce the laws. The right authorities have to do the right thing, arrest and prosecute people who break the sanitation bylaws.
The Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, was formally established and given the responsibility of regulating the environment and ensuring the implementation of government policies to protect and enhance the environment. I spoke with the Acting Director of Petroleum Department of EPA, Kojo Agbeno Efunam. He tells me more.
EPA is a public institution and set up by an Act of Parliament in 1994, Act 490. Now, if you look at the Constitution of Ghana, there is a provision that the state should take appropriate steps in order to ensure and safeguard the national environment for posterity, and also shall seek cooperation from other states, bodies, and other organizations for the preservation of the environment for mankind. So that constitutional provision mandates the states to ensure that the environment of Ghana is healthy and the environment of Ghana is where everybody wants to live in. Now, with that constitutional provision, it became imperative for the country to set up an institution to oversee that. And the EPA was set up in 1994. But prior to that, the environmental consciousness became, came to the fore in 1972 when the world started looking at the economic development paradigm, and the world recognized that the paradigm of economic development, if we don't do anything about it, is going to cause the entire earth a grievous problem. So the talk started from that time. And in response to that call, the Ghana government established what is called then Environmental Protection Council. So the council was set up, but basically it was advisory to government without any regulatory powers. So come in the Fourth Republic, we have the Constitution. So the constitutional provision now mandates the executive to set up this state organization that will regulate the activities of the people of the country in order to have that vision that has been carved in. So that is how come the agency was set up by Act in 1994, Act 490. Principally, 19 functions were given to the agency. Key in the function is the regulatory powers. So we have the powers as the common people would know, the police. So we have the powers to enforce the environmental laws that have come into the country, or any environmental laws that we come up with, we have to enforce that law. So principally, that is what we do. For anybody to set up any organization, business, or anything, anywhere, the law mandates that person to come to the EPA to come and obtain a permit. And there is a process that is carved out in the law. Now, apart from the mother law that established the agency, which is the Act 490 that I talked about, there is a subsidiary legislation, another law, which is ALI 1652, Environmental Assessment Regulations. And this regulation spells out how anybody will get a permit from EPA, and how the EPA must also give the permit to the person. And after giving the permit, what the person should do and what EPA should do. So these are the things that are spelled in that regulation. The violation of any of those provisions will now result in certain measures that are also spelled in the law. Measures like prosecution. If we talk about environment, it's so broad, and the economic activities are in the various sectors. the EPA is also organized that way. So, for example, you are talking to me, I looked at petroleum operations, that's upstream petroleum operations. So my unit gave permit to companies that are coming to do exploration and to produce oil. And because currently we are producing the oil from the marine environment, so we are also much conscious of the things that happen in the marine environment and the actions of these companies that might result in damaging the marine environment. There are other departments that looks at other aspects. For example, there is a mining aspect, which another department looks at. There is the human settlement, that is within the cities and the urban areas. So they are also focused in that area. There are other departments, as I mentioned, we have a department called Natural Resources. They are into how forest cover is protected, how anybody who wants to engage in fish farming and land degradation, things like that. So they also looked at that. Then we have another department that goes out consciously trying to monitor what is happening in the environment, air, water, and that is environmental quality. So they take the environmental quality data. So there are other departments, but you can look at it that way. And each of us, these departments that I've mentioned, we work along the same line, along the same objective, making sure everybody is doing what is right, what is what the law says we should do.
According to Mr. Efunam, the agency works hand in hand with the assemblies to execute this mandate.
The assemblies are very, very critical to us. Most of the things that you might see, what the ordinary people see as the environment, and for which most of the time they look up to EPA, are really for the assemblies. The assemblies would need to work on those ones. But then, because, for example, you look at waste. If you look at waste in your neighborhood, that's not the job for EPA. You look at waste that is in your gutters, that is not the job for EPA. That is the assembly's job. That is the assembly's job. And there is a noise in your environment. That is the assembly's job. But because we have the technical expertise, and then we also have that mandate, and all these things that I mentioned, the waste is going into the environment, the noise is also going into the environment, and we have the major, or let me say the umbrella law to protect the environment. We cannot leave it to the assemblies and said, oh, it is the assembly's responsibility, so they must do it. So we work closely with them, and that is why now we are trying so much to decentralize to that level. We have not gotten there yet. We have offices in all the 16 regions, and then there are other offices which we call area offices. Yeah, they are also there. I think we get into about 42 thereabout. So these offices are there so that we can be close to the assemblies and work with them to ensure the best environment that we are all looking for, we get it.
The country's water sources are heavily polluted with rubbish and other harmful waste materials. Acting Director of Petroleum Department of EPA is worried about the current state of the country's water bodies and its effects on the livelihood of fishes.
Anytime you go to any of the major cities that you find in the world, the major cities, you will see that there is a river passing through that city, the capital cities. You can mention, when you go to Europe, you can mention any of them. As if God designed it that way, that major cities should be built around rivers. You see all those rivers, They are so clean. You can take water from them with your hand. They use it for water transport so that you don't have so much congestions also on the road. So there is ferry, there are boats that are crisscrossing. Yeah. You go to Paris, you see it. You go to Germany, you see it. You go to London, you see it. All those European major cities, you see it. Come down to us over here, particularly in the West Africa sub-region. Accra, we have it. We have our Thames, which naturally flows through Korle Lagoon and then enter the sea. What have we done to it? So that is what I mean by there is more to be done. There is no stream that we have now that we either think we need to fill the banks to have our buildings there, or we want to use it as a means of getting our waste away from our homes. So all the time we take our waste, the closest water body, we put the waste in it.
Including the drains that we have.
Including the drains that we have. And even if you put it into the drains, every drain ought to lead into a water body. So once you put something into your drain, you are asking it to go into a particular water body. So slowly, we are killing all the water bodies that we have. And every water body that you have, its final destination is the sea. And that is why if you go to the beaches, you see a lot of waste. You just visit any of the beaches in Ghana today. When it rains, you can see a lot of, excuse me to say, trash all around. And that is how come currently, if our fisher folks go to fish, what they get is more plastic bags rather than fish. I always say personally, I fish to school myself.
Oh, that's wow.
So I'm very passionate when it things concern the marine environment and the fish industry. The way I grew up knowing the fishing industry, it has deteriorated so fast. Just within about 2 decades, what we see now is so pathetic. You go to fishing in the early 80s and then get into the 90s, you cannot come home empty-handed, or one net that you cast when you draw, you use the beach seining a lot, one draw can take you the whole day trying to get the fish and process it. Sometimes the women became tired of being loaded with the fish.
He lists some of the challenges affecting the work of the government agency.
EPA, we have been doing a lot. It is only that the challenge is huge. That is why we are not seeing the impact. We have passed a law. It's called Waste Regulation LI 2250. That law also spells out what needs to be done. But it takes a bit of time for a law to become so much. You can see its effect. Currently, what we are concentrating on in implementation of that law is the e-waste, because it is so harmful. Yeah, but then we have looked at all these plastic products and things like that goes into the ocean and into our beaches. We see it in the gutter. There are provisions in it. It is the enforcement side maybe that we will have to look at, the logistics that we need to For example, you expect the EPA officers to be on the ground. You expect them to be going out all the time. Yeah, but then how many people do you have? And there are places that are so vast. The last time I went with my executive director to the Volta region office, and to visit them and see how they are also coping over there. If you see the large tract of area they have to cover with the resources that they have, it's very, very, I may not say pathetic, because it's a large area and they have, let's say, about 2 vehicles. What can you do with that? Then, with those logistic challenges, we are also trying our best, so we also overcome them. The other challenge that we have mostly is with let me say the assembly side, which we have talked a lot about. If the assemblies, all the assemblies, are doing their work properly, we should not be having so much of some of this environmental problem. In another example in that area is, the EPA is not the planning authority. It's assemblies that are the planning authorities, and sometimes they give a permit to, let's say, they give a permit to somebody to establish a church here. So the person starts constructing, and then the person is almost done. Then they give another permit to somebody just close by who want to manufacture, and the person is going to be generating smoke. What do you think will happen to the two? There will always be conflict. The two. So we face that, and we are also to give permits to these people. Now, you look at the way the two are, we call it compatibility. How can this be with this? Are they compatible? There is incompatibility. But already they have obtained a permit from the planning authorities. So what do we do? Do you continue and say, no, I am not going to give you permit because it's not compatible? Then you are going to be looked at as not ready for the country to develop. Okay, so I use these two, like a church and this. We see this conflict a lot, and mostly when the challenge comes, everybody turns to EPA, and then they said, "Oh, EPA has given permit. How can EPA give permit to them?" But already the person has a development permit. The person has a development permit from the assembly. So what we are going to do is, okay, if you come here, the environmental problems that will come, address it. But then the problem will have to come before you be addressing, and that is where the situation becomes a bit murky.
Amongst the recommendations tabled to help restore the ocean, take-back system remains key. Acting Director of Petroleum Department of EPA and country leader of Let's Do It Ghana are also calling for collective action to protect and restore the ocean.
Is it the manufacturers or is it the consumers? Largely, it's the consumers. The manufacturers also have a share, because there is something we call in the environmental management as a cradle to the grave approach. So if I am into manufacturing a particular product, I want to see the end of that product. If I package anything and I give it to the consumer, I want to see how that package will end. So I don't just produce and give to the consumers without thinking of the end product, without thinking of where that end product will land. But if I am only conscious of sending whatever I have, whether beverage or whatever, to my customers or my consumers, without thinking of the packaging, how it is going to end, then I have a responsibility, and I cannot escape any blame from there. But where I have measures in place, I put in measures in place. You know, some time back, we had this return. You know, you cannot, for example, some products they still do it. Let me use this product which is common, and I'm not marketing for them. Yeah, let's say if you take Coca-Cola, it has been there for a very long time. I think it was there before I even came, and it's still there. You know, some time back, you see, when you get that product, you can drink and then you leave it. You leave the bottle, drink and then. But then at a point, they decided it cannot be so. So if you want to go and buy it, you don't bring the bottle, they don't give you. Because they want to retrieve the bottles that they have produced first. So if I am coming to buy and I don't have the bottle, then I pay for. If I'm taking it away, but if I'm going to drink it over there, I drink it and I leave it, then that is it. And some bottling companies have also adopted that. And you know, there are some, those manufacturing beer and all that, they adopted that approach. But what we are currently seeing, particularly with the water bottles, there is no take back system that they have put in place. So we are looking at the root cause, where this thing is coming from, and then we are starting from the manufacturers, their responsibility. That is what I'm talking about. Now, then we come to the consumer. You see, the consumer is such a person that really you cannot so much control. But there is a way to control the consumer in the way the consumer would deal with the end product. That is, no one wants to throw his or her money away. No one wants to throw the money away. So if you put a cap, if you put something on, for example, the water sachet, supposing we say anybody who brings a sachet bag, one of them, you come for your 50 pesos. Do you think you see sachet water all around? You don't see it. Because if you drop it, somebody will pick it and then go and take the 50. If you take, so my proposal is, that is a solution. For example, water sachet, how much is it costing now? If it is 30 pesos, you are buying it once a day, 30 pesos. If you bring the bag, you take your once a day. Do you think you see all these polythene bags going into the ocean? No. And that is how you can control the consumer. But if the consumer doesn't feel, if I drop the polythene bag, if I drop my sachet, I am not going to lose anything. Why should I carry it where there are no waste bins around for me to drop it? Sometimes even those of us who are working here, you drink, you go around, there are no place to dispose of these things. But again, if you travel outside, you see there are places that have been made for people to deposit some of these things. I've been in some countries and I've seen how good that has been. But even here, as you mentioned, the attitude, try putting some of those things there. Some people will come and steal them away. That is another attitude, ugly attitude that we have.
We need all hands on deck. As citizens, we have to be responsible and play our role. What do we do? We need to properly dispose of our waste. But if we change our consumption patterns and go for reuse and we are refusing single-use plastic, it also discourages manufacturing companies to produce the single-use plastics. The government also has a role to play. The government has to provide us dustbins, for citizens to easily dispose of their waste. And also, most importantly, we can't leave out the plastic manufacturing companies. They are part of the problem because they are the ones producing the plastics, and that is what is causing the plastic pollution. That is what is polluting our environment. Therefore, we have to hold them accountable. And they can also help to stop this problem or address the plastic pollution by simply, and most importantly, closing the tap. They just have to turn off the tap. And if I say they should turn off the tap, what I mean is that they have to stop production. If you stop producing single-use plastic, it will end the plastic pollution because there will be no more plastic in the environment. They have to invest in redesigning packages that are reusable and refillable.
Catch fish for the whole nation. She gonna go fuel no quotation. The battle brought in the inflation. Bring on all this confusion. But the government take our award. Yesterday, no, our boats are my sword. 3 died and go to the god. Don't mean now, why I would on the award. NMFN, nonsense stability. One lack storage facility. Case incompatibility. I can't mean about the one way. I know bucket. Then they call me fisherman. Fisherman. Hold on. International fisherman.